Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Dr. Curtis Reads. I'm your host, Dr. Curtis Runstedler. This is my third episode, bringing you some cool books that we can talk about too. So this week's offering is The Women by Kristin Hannah, one of my favorite books from last year, 2024. Lots to talk about too. I'll also talk about one of her other books that I really enjoyed too, The Great Alone too. Both great books too. So if you can get your hands on either of them too, she's usually quite available in a lot of the mainstream booksellers too, or you could support your local bookstore. But I loved both of these books too. So be talking mostly about The Women today, but I will talk a little bit more about The Great Alone. If there's interest too, let me know in the comments too. I'd love to maybe make another separate episode on The Great Alone too, because I have so much to say about both books too, and I'm also interested to hear what you have to say about those books too. So tune in. Feeling very, it's kind of rainy in Germany today too, but I'm wearing my ABBA shirt too, so I'm hoping to bring a little bit of sunshine and Swedish cheer to the land. So I heard about The Women from a Stephen King tweet. I'm not going to call it X. I heard it from a Stephen King tweet. He said it was an amazing book too. So I was kind of intrigued about it too, because I often follow a lot of Stephen King's recommendations. Sometimes he has some misfires, but a lot of times he has cool stuff that I've never heard of before. So this was one of them. I'd never heard of Kristin Hannah's work before too. Obviously, she's a very prolific author. She's been writing for decades too. Her most famous book is The Nightingale, which was just greenlit for TV, sorry, movie adaptation starring the Fanning sisters, so Elle Fanning and Dakota Fanning too. That's set in the World War II. I'm usually kind of a World War II buff, but history buff, but I actually wasn't so interested in the Nightingale too. But this one really grabbed me too. It's about the Vietnam War. It's about a woman who she lives in this kind of literally insular kind of community in 60s, 70s California, and she kind of breaks rank with a lot of the social expectations there, and she goes to serve in the Vietnam War as a nurse too, as a lot of women did at the time too, but their history has kind of been forgotten too for kind of sexist reasons too. So she wrote this book, and it kind of shines a light on a lot of these women who kind of worked together, fought together, lived together, went through kind of the same hurdles that a lot of women had to face at the time too. And I'm really interested in the Vietnam War. I think it's really fascinating from a historical perspective too. So this is another kind of great Vietnam War book too, which is based on a lot of true stories apparently too. So it's a very beautiful cover, as you can see too, and I like it with the kind of color hues, the sun and the red too. It's a little bit ominous too, because it feels like the sun is rising or setting, but they probably napalm bombs somewhere nearby too. A lot of atrocities committed during this time too, especially by a lot of the American forces, the Americans who didn't really have any right being there too. And I think the Vietnam War is really interesting too, because it's a war that I don't think America has ever really come to terms with, confronted. I think America, for all its great aspects too, there's a lot of darkness and kind of racism there as well too, the kind of imperialist history. And I think the Vietnam War is one that Americans have never really come to terms with too, not always very good at confronting their own history too. But it tells the story of a young woman who joins the Vietnam War as a nurse too, and I'll get more into that afterwards too. I really liked the main character too, Frankie. She was really badass and cool, and I liked all of her friends too. She meets a bunch of friends in the Vietnam War, and the novel kind of traces their experiences through life in the coming decades too, with the hardships they have to go through. But throughout, they kind of have that strong friendship that binds them together too, that kind of motivates them and keeps them going too. And I will say, I won't give too many spoilers away, but the ending was really beautiful and it's really satisfying. So lots to talk about there. And obviously the book also looks at kind of the backlash she receives because she is a woman, because she is, breaking from kind of societal expectations of what women should do, because she's kind of thinking for herself and, um, resisting kind of patriarchal authority too. And I think that's one theme, the resistance that kind of comes in really strong too. And I think we need kind of critical thinking now more than ever. So being able to think for yourself, being able to kind of not follow what everyone else is doing or what they're thinking too, just having your own opinions and ideas about it, which I think everyone should have too. I always encourage my students to think for yourself. It's like that Nazi punks fuck off song by Dead Kennedys too. So punk means thinking for yourself, and this is very much it, right? So she wants to think for herself. She wants to live for herself, and she's not content to have others, especially men, kind of make decisions in her life, choose her life for you. It's always good if people in your life kind of give you feedback and opinions, but at the end of the day, you want to do what you want to do. You don't want to do what someone else is telling you to do too. So that really plays into it too. So she lives on this island off the coast of California too, called Coronado Island. It sounds very posh and aristocratic. It is because it is. It's a very wealthy elite neighborhood too, and literally quite insular. They live on an island too, so kind of in a bubble world away from the rest of California too. Um, so she lives this very insular existence, and she's constantly faced by societal barriers, usually by men. The women in her life are not supposed to join the war effort, they're not supposed to take active roles. So going to Vietnam is actually kind of this act of feminist resistance and this kind of empowerment. And when I say feminism, I mean I would say I'm an intersectional feminist because I also believe in intersections between race and gender and social class too, not just about gender inequality, but feminism in its essence means here the equality between women and men too. So it's also good for men too. It encourages us to kind of say more about our emotions too, to kind of communicate better too, and also have better relationships with women. I think that's really important. So feminism is about equality. It's not about women hating on men. That's just kind of uninformed, and I think most feminists would agree that like that's not good for anyone. So really good in that way too. So I think it's really good for male readers and female readers, I think, to have this experience to kind of see from a different perspective too, and kind of discover um, just hear more about this story too, and recognize that there's inequalities back then that people are still facing today too. And this book poses a lot of kind of problem solving, which is good too, because I think it's good to critique things, but it's also good to have solutions and ideas about solutions too, if they're kind of sustainable and workable too. So she's wanting to have the same opportunities and be treated as equal too. This is very hard in the society too, because her father's always kind of berating her and trying to kind of uh, getting her to think a certain way too. And I think feminism in this way kind of helps women to kind of think for themselves and who they want to be. So she's obviously judged for going to Vietnam, for being a woman and thinking for herself, and also judged for helping out in the war effort too. The book is split into different sections too, so it starts off in her time in Coronado Island, and then we have her time in Vietnam when she's serving. It's very graphic, some of the injuries she deals with. I think Kristin Hannah tried to make it as realistic as possible too, so some of it is quite graphic too. So make sure you have a strong stomach, or don't eat too much pizza before reading the Vietnam sections, but I can recommend all of it too. And I think the focalization is also very important too. It's told in third person, so third person, but with a focus on her. And I think the focalization makes you kind of engender sympathy for her too. So you see what she goes through. So even like male readers reading it, I think you'll really recognize, just how unequal this relationship is too. And you also root for the other women who work with her too. So the kind of women that she meets along the way too, who support her too. And Vietnam is also kind of metaphorical for her too. It becomes this place where she kind of discovers herself, and she finds a sense of purpose beyond kind of societal expectations. I was also really interested in Kristin Hannah's the romantic relationships depicted in the novel too. I think Kristin Hannah is really good with that too. There's a lot of kind of twists and turns too. So characters you think are gonna make it to the end don't make it to the end. So very George R. R. Martin in that way too. I think George R. R. Martin sometimes likes to think he's the first one who kind of unexpectedly kills off characters, but I think Kristin Hannah does a great job with that too. So George R. R. Martin wasn't the first one, but her relationships with men are also really intriguing, full of twists and turns. Guys that you think are really nice turn out to be assholes. Characters you think are dead kind of come back, or characters you think are going to make it to the end die unexpectedly too. So it's more than just your kind of standard romance book too. So don't be deceived by these kind of by Delia Owens is she wrote where the crawdads sing, astonishing, compelling, powerful. These book blurbs, they don't really mean anything. They're just kind of like, the Daily Mail blurbs. Like, what did all these words mean? I want to know what these words mean. But I mean, I guess it's their way of marketing the book too. Um, Bonnie Garmis uplifts with heroism. Okay, well that says a little bit more. But a lot of these book blurbs, I feel like they're a bit shallow sometimes. They don't really say that much about what the book means. Um, so yeah, it's more than just a romance book. It's a little bit of everything too. It's a bit of historical fiction. It's also kind of romance. It's also kind of it's kind of a feminist novel, I would say as well. And I think if we go back to the 80s to one of my favorite artists, Bruce Springsteen, when he wrote Born in the USA in 1984, there was kind of a big hoopla when that came out because Ronald Reagan used it as kind of this theme song for America. But obviously, stupid Reagan didn't read the lyrics too, because if you read the actual lyrics about Born in the USA, uh, Bruce was describing what he saw around him, and he saw a lot of people, a lot of his friends coming back from the Vietnam War, and they were fucked up. Like they they would come back from the war too, and one of the lines of the song is like acting like a dog that's been beat too much, and you spend half your life just covering it up. So that's not a patriotic song. It's about people who are coming back to the USA, the country they fought for, they risked their lives for, they lost their friends for, maybe because they were poor, maybe because they were black, and they would come back to USA in the 60s and 70s, and they'd be treated like scumbags, and they'd be kind of spat on by the society that kind of told them to go in the first place. So what are they supposed to do? So that song is about that too, and I think the song applies to um, the women too, because when Frankie comes back from the war, she's treated like a Nazi. She's treated like she's spat on, literally, I think, by the people around her. And I mean, all she wanted to do was help people and kind of break free from, so damned if you do, damned if you don't, So she comes back and she's kind of not really given a warm reception, quite the opposite, really. And it's not the patriotic song that Ronald Reagan assumes it to be. And so I think the lesson here is always read the song lyrics too, and think for yourself. So Frankie's obviously traumatized by her experiences in Vietnam, and she returns home to have this kind of awful reception to, and this sense of confusion and kind of alienation in your own country, which is probably one of the worst feelings you can experience too. And I think the Vietnam War has always kind of sat like a bit of a blemish in America's 20th century history too, because America has never been able to reconcile that feeling of loss, and also that feeling of how do we look back to the Vietnam War. I guess it's similar to the war in Iraq, how people respond to that as well too. Um, so she's still but judged for being a kind of for being a woman too when she comes back too. So on one hand too, she has this awful treatment. She's called a Nazi. She's spat on by the people around her, but they also kind of gaslight her experiences there, right? They're like, oh, you're a woman. Women weren't in Vietnam. Well, we've seen firsthand her experiences in Vietnam. Obviously, she was there, so her experiences are viewed as less important than kind of male characters too. And this is kind of dissonance between what her family assumes and what she has seen, and the reader's share experience of what she has seen too. Something that's really important for also engendering empathy too. And the family and her friends, some of them, gaslight her for because her behavior deviates from how she believes women should act and behave. So Frankie is not a quote unquote trad wife, too. She's a woman who thinks for herself, but because she is different, society punishes her for that. So and the end of the novel, as I said too, is very satisfying too. Again, I don't want to give too much away, but it is kind of a rewarding after seeing what she goes through. When she comes back, she gets hooked on drugs too. She's it's not really she doesn't know how to kind of she doesn't have a anything to turn to, I guess, in terms of emotional support or anyone really to listen to her, so she turns to drugs and abuses her body instead. So Frankie has the last laugh too, so it's a good feminist happy ending, I would say too. And I think Hannah also acknowledges the friendship between these strong women and the bonds that they share too. They're stronger together. That's why they call it the women, I guess. It's a sense of community, it's a sense of solidarity, it's a sense of empowerment too, and it's a sense of remembrance too. We remember their experiences joined together too. So there's a whole range of emotions for the story. I felt angry. I felt angry at the way the women were mistreated, and a lot of times by the men. And I was frustrated too, seeing kind of the hardships they had to deal with. And I also felt relieved and sad and delighted too. There's a quote at the end of the book too that one of the stupid guys who probably wasn't in Vietnam, he's like, there were no women in Nam. Well, that's not true, because we've seen the whole book is about her experience in Nam, and what has stayed with her with that experience too. So there's a sense of disorientation, I think, and confusion upon returning home, this kind of alienation, and it shines a light on these brave women who risked everything, and the trauma and sexism that they faced too. It's a long journey to finding fulfillment and sense of purpose, living with the heartbreak of losing loved ones, dying around you, missed opportunities, and experiencing that kind of survivor's guilt. So survivor's guilt being that feeling that when others die around you that you should have died in their place too, which is, not true. You're there because you're supposed to be there too, and what happened is a tragedy, but you live with that and you bring those people's memories with you. That's really important, I think. So I was really moved by the solidarity and sense of loyalty between Frankie, Ethel, and Barb, um, fighting, and these are the women she kind of serves with too. And it's the best deep dive into the Vietnam War since Ken Burns and Jeffrey Ward took on the Vietnam War too. They wrote an excellent table book called The Vietnam War a few years ago, just before the pandemic. And I also really recommend PBS's The Vietnam War miniseries. It's excellent. It's one of the best documentations on the Vietnam War that I've seen. I started watching on the plane. I thought it was 4 episodes. It's actually 10 episodes, but it's so thorough, it's so good. I think most of Burns' work is really good. So if you could check that out on PBS, I really recommend it too. And the book is also really good. It also has like a section too that like what would if JFK hypothetically done in his second term with the Vietnam War too. And I think a lot of people put JFK on the pedestal because he died young and he was good looking and charismatic. But I mean, he was also responsible for the Vietnam War. He was also kind of more conservative, I think, than a lot of Americans like to believe. So yeah, definitely check that out. So it's my favorite book from last year. That's The Woman. And I have read some of her other books too. I read The Four Winds, which I liked. That was about the Dust Bowl in in the USA too, and the hardships that the people had to go through too. So there was this kind of dust bowl, and there's a kind of huge crop failure, and a lot of families had to move to California. Obviously, a lot of people died and starved along the way too, and there were also a lot of locusts too. So locusts came and devoured everything, and there was no growth, so that's why they called it the Dust Bowl because there was all these windstorms and sandstorms. Um, that's The Women. I also really recommend The Great Alone, and I might do another episode on this book because I really love this book too. And it's also excellent. It's about a girl whose father also served in the Vietnam War, but he goes in a very different direction than Frankie too. He has PTSD, obviously, untreated too. So I think a lot of these situations could be better resolved if the men went to therapy. And he moves the family to remote Alaska too. And we see the family dynamic begin to deteriorate, especially as his mental health starts to deteriorate. He becomes more abusive, but the focus is on the young girl in that family too, and her kind of life in Arizona or Alaska, sorry, as she becomes more and more kind of enclosed within that kind of toxic relationship with her father too. So it might get its own episode, but again, I'm really interested to hear what you think too. But that's The Women. So if you have any comments or questions or want to hear more Kristin Hannah, do let me know. I'm always happy to chat about books, especially books that I love. And we'll see you next time. Take care, everyone.